David Allen McCorriston was sentenced on the 1st of September 2022 at Sydney Downing Centre District Court for sexual offences against boys between 1987 and 2008. I will at this point mention that I have been contacted by someone who alleges he was another victim of David McCorriston in the late 1990s. He reported it to police at the time, but it did not result in any charges, and he is now pursuing this matter again. But before I go into more details about this, I will firstly discuss David McCorriston's sentence hearings that occurred on the 27th of July and the 1st of September 2022. Amy Ziniak gave the following report in the Newcastle news section of the Daily Telegraph on the 27th of July 2022. A court has heard David Allen McCorriston, the brother of serial rapist Warren McCorriston, who admitted to abusing 3 boys dating back more than 3 decades in the Hunter. Now, that's David McCorriston who was accused, not Warren, a little bit ambiguous there, but anyway, followed a pattern of befriending the young boys, giving them alcohol, and engaging in sexual activities. It was also heard McCorriston from Belmont, now aged 57, performed oral sex on his victims and they performed oral sex on him. Earlier this year, he pleaded guilty to 19 charges ranging from sexual intercourse with a person under 16, aggravated indecent assault with a person under 16, sexual assault, incite indecent act with a person under 16, sex assault and commit an act of indecency and sexual assault indecent act with a person under 16. Prosecutors withdrew a further 20 charges, which included sexual assault, indecent assault of a person under 16 under authority, sexual intercourse with a person under 16, incite aggravated indecency with victim under 16 under authority, and sexual assault, incite indecent act with a person under 16. In Newcastle District Court on Wednesday, McCorriston appeared via video link for sentencing. Defence barrister Bill Hussey said his client had good prospects of rehabilitation, given he hasn't offended for around 14 years and was now medicated for his mental health conditions. The court heard McCorriston was diagnosed with paraphilic disorder, but made reports to his doctor of declining libido and a reduction in masturbation. Now, you might be wondering what paraphilic disorder is, and I wasn't quite sure either, so I did look it up. Basically, it's an intense sexual interest that may not be considered typical, and the person is personally distressed by it, or it causes distress or harm to another person who may not be consenting or legally capable of consenting. And in some cases, the person with the condition may get intense sexual arousal by that lack of consent. Now, some common examples, of which there are many relating to paraphilia apparently, are voyeurism, exhibitionism, pedophilia, and so on. Anyway, that's a quick definition, and I shall go back to the newspaper article. So to continue, Mr. Hussey said he was far less likely to re-offend, asking for his moral culpability to be reduced on the fact there is a direct link to his paraphilia and his offending, and his upbringing of neglect, which included sexual abuse from the age of 13, which he only reported to police in 2006, but did not press the complaint. The defence barrister went on to say that whilst the victim suffered trauma from the abuse, the offending was less serious and painful type of sexual activity which didn't include anal. There is no evidence that harm is substantial, Mr. Hussey said. Don't know if the victims would agree, but anyway. He asked Judge Sharon Norton to consider an aggregate sentence with a non-parole period of around 6 to 9 years. Crown Prosecutor Lee Carr SC said there was grooming of the 3 young boys, and one complainant referred to it happening fortnightly for about a year. It would be a difficult exercise to come to a positive view there were good prospects of lack of reoffending. Making a positive finding is a difficult task, Mr. Carr said. Judge Norton noted patterns of offending had ceased by him making a decision not to do it, which must go some way to him not reoffending. The Crown replied it would provide some support he is not likely to reoffend, but that should be guarded. Judge Norton will hand down her full sentence on August 11 in Sydney. Now that must have been delayed because the final sentence didn't occur until the 1st of September. Anyway, both McCorristons were arrested and charged by detectives from Strikeforce Arapaima, established 3 years ago to re-investigate the suspicious disappearances of Robin Hickey and Amanda Robinson in 1979. Warren McCorriston remains a person of interest in the investigation following his convictions last year for the sexual assaults of 3 women dating back several decades. He was jailed for 8.5 years with a non-parole period of 4.5 years. Warren McCorriston has not been charged with any offences relating to the missing girls. His younger brother was arrested last June after Strikeforce Arapaima detectives uncovered his offending while investigating the missing girls. There is no suggestion David McCorriston has any involvement in the disappearances of either woman, nor was he involved in his brother's offending. Okay, so the final sentence hearing was on the 1st of September 2022, and the next day the Newcastle Herald reported on page 2 the following. McCorriston breached trust, preyed on boys, by Sam Rigney. He befriended families and earned their trust so he could groom and prey on 3 young boys over a more than 20-year period. On Thursday, sexual predator David Allen McCorriston, now 57, was jailed for a maximum of 11 years and 6 months for a pattern of heinous crimes described as a gross breach of trust. The Belmont man, who is the younger brother of convicted rapist Warren John McCorriston, groomed the young boys, teaching them to drive, taking them camping, and plying them with alcohol before repeatedly sexually and indecently assaulted them. Both McCorriston brothers were charged by detectives from Strike Force Arapaima, established in 2019, to re-examine the investigation into the unsolved disappearances and suspected murders of Robin Hickey and Amanda Robinson in 1979 and Gordana Katevsky in 1994. Warren McCorriston, a former resort manager, was last year jailed for a maximum of 8.5 years for offences against 3 women between 1979 and 1999. He will be eligible for parole in 2024. Meanwhile, David McCorriston won't be out until at least 2028. He pleaded guilty to 19 offences, including 8 counts of sexual intercourse with a person aged between 10 and 16, and on Thursday was jailed for a maximum of 11 years and 6 months, with a non-parole period of 6 years and 11 months. In 1987, David McCorriston was aged in his early 20s and had not long been released from jail for sexual assault. So he had been convicted before of some offence. So had not long been released from jail for sexual assault when he befriended a 14-year-old boy. David McCorriston would let the boy drive his car and stay at his house and gave him alcohol before repeatedly sexually and indecently assaulting the boy. In 1990, he befriended the family of another boy, 12, who came over to his house every fortnight, where he was regularly sexually and indecently assaulted. In 2008, David McCorriston was involved with the Scouts and befriended another family that he would take camping. The family were told by other members of the Scouts that they were concerned about David McCorriston being around children. The father of his next victim even threatened David McCorriston that if he ever touched his son, he would kill him. Despite promising he never would, David McCorriston touched the boy's genitals when insisting on toweling him off. It was a gross breach of trust, Judge Sharon Norton said. The offender had become a close family friend and had said he would never touch the children. He was befriended by the family and used that friendship to gain access to the boy. Okay, so we now have that David McCorriston has been convicted and sentenced for those assaults against the 3 boys, but there is a possibility of more charges in the future against him because, as I mentioned, someone has contacted me alleging that he was also sexually assaulted by David McCorriston in the 1990s. Now, I'll just go through a bit of information he has sent me. In the first message, which was the 5th of June this year, he has said there will be more charges. Well, they will be the charges he had been given in 1998 when he abused myself for almost 2 years, but were dropped because I was a 13-year-old boy and I got a date wrong. The detectives told me to drop the charges. I was 13. The only days I knew were Saturdays. But David was able to prove he was in Queensland and paid his car rego. Well, it turns out his brother lived in Queensland and was the person who paid the rego, not David. So, as we'd probably know, that would be Warren McCorriston, I dare say. The police really let me down. So did the detectives, but I have contacted a lawyer and they are proceeding with my case. Okay, so now that David McCorriston has been sentenced, I sent him another message asking if he had anything to update on the matter. And so his reply to me was, I wasn't aware he was sentenced. So far the detective has told me they are processing the charges and gave me an event number and a contact with the SAMSN org for support. Not sure what the SAMSN is, but I'll see if I can figure that out and might put a note at the bottom of the screen. So it seems there's more to come from this, and so stay tuned and I'll update you with any further information. Now, I had been thinking that David McCorriston has gotten a much longer sentence and non-parole period to his brother. And initially I was thinking that he would have got, well, less, because Warren McCorriston's offences involved significant physical violence, resulting in hospitalisations, at least in one case, and even fearing his victims that he was going to kill them. Though, of course, that's, I guess, the victim's opinion. Can't really say that was his intent, but who knows. They were terrified though. Though I did think more about it, and I can understand why David may have gotten more, because they are different offences. Warren's involved adults. David's was involved children and also breaching trust, and like the victims, in a sense, were people who were in his care as children. And I can see, yes, that possibly maybe both of them should have got longer terms, who knows, but yes, I can see why David got the longer sentence. Anyway, I'll leave it there. So till next time, I'm David A. Elliott. Have a good one and see you around like a ristle.